Welcome back. Now, the question is South Africa facing an international relations crisis? Earlier this week, Taiwan announced it's considering restrictions on semiconductor chip exports to South Africa following the downgrade of its diplomatic mission in Pretoria. This comes amid ongoing criticism from the United States over South Africa's growing ties with China and Iran, as well as its stance on Israel and its support for the International Court of Justice genocide case against Israel. Relations between South Africa and the US have been strained for several years, but tensions have deepened since the Trump administration. Dr. Oscar van Heerden from the University of Johannesburg joins me now to weigh in on this. A very good evening to you, Prof. Thank you so much for joining us. And the big question, would you say that South Africa is in or heading for an international relations crisis?
Well, good evening, Martha. I wouldn't say it's a crisis per se. Diplomacy is fluid. But I can say that certainly for the first time in our 30-year democracy, the South African government's foreign policy choices are front and center. And as you say, the United States is picking a fight with South Africa around some of those issues. So a very difficult situation, definitely. Not something that is insurmountable. If the parties are genuinely wanting to talk and resolve around some of these issues. But yes, certainly South Africa's foreign policy choices in the limelight.
On South Africa's foreign policy choices, one has to look at what's going on in the Middle East as well, and the war on Gaza by Israel as well. And the criticism that the US has given to the South African government for taking that case to the ICJ too. But now fast forward almost 18 or more months later, we're seeing more and more of even the United States allies, the United Kingdom, France, countries like Malaysia, who are now possibly going more on the side of South Africa and its stance of what's happening in Palestine. So would you say that it's not an international relations crisis for South Africa, but necessarily an international relations dilemma for the United States when you're looking at the other countries who are also coming on board?
Yes, the thing, Martha, is that these things are not black and white. It's never straightforward. Yes, as I say, it's about certain foreign policy choices South Africa has made. In this case, a principled decision to take the state of Israel to the International Court of Justice for the crime of genocide in the Gaza. Now, of course, by the time South Africa took the case to the ICJ, as you rightfully point out, there were many countries that were not in agreement with South Africa. They were arguing that it is not genocide. But now we see increasingly, especially this latest stint by the Israeli government using starvation as a weapon of war. I think many countries now in Europe, Western Europe, Canada, and numerous countries in the global south, Brazil has decided to also join the case, deciding to say and call it for what it is, a genocide. So the United States, of course, not happy, wanting to punish South Africa for doing that. We know, for example, the US is also threatening the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and the chief prosecutor, Mr. Khan there, with sanctions and punitive actions. But on the one hand, it is policy choices that we've made as South Africa. But on the other hand, there's two other issues that I think is important to also remember, Masa, and that is, one, some of our own homegrown compatriots and citizens went to the United States requesting these punitive actions against our government. So they must also they must also own up to that request. And two, we also know that we have a superpower, a hegemon globally in the form of the United States that is beginning to lose its position within the world. Multilateralism, the global south, countries like India, China in particular, are beginning to overtake the United States. And these are also attempts to try and coerce and bully countries into remaining the global hegemon. And the time for that is up.
And while the time for that may also be up and coming to its end as well, when we're looking at, multilateralism, the efforts have been made over the years when it comes to multilateralism. The point is still that, the economics are very concerned about about the economy of South Africa when it comes to these tariffs. And while South Africa has taken a noble approach and the right approach when it comes to the case that it's taken to the ICJ, the point is that this punishment by the United States will ultimately impact us devastatingly so in our economy.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's been some very specific analysis made in terms of the precise impact it will have. No doubt, the citrus industry, the automotive sector, they are going to feel it. It's going to sting. But I think what we need to realize is that because of what I just said, Masa, because there is this last kicks of a waning power of a dying horse, it is going to unfortunately hurt many countries, particularly smaller countries, middle-sized economies such as ourselves and so forth, because it seems quite evident to me that the United States is not going to quietly go into the night like the British Empire did, the Ottomans and so forth. They want to go down fighting. They want to cling on to being the hegemon and the big honcho, and they're prepared to bully and bomb if needs be. We see it happening. They're about to pick a fight with China. All the things are being prepared and set up in that part of the world. It's very unstable. It's very uncertain, and Trump doesn't help matters. So I think for South Africa, what we need to do is to remain principled with our foreign policy choices. We need to operate within international law, because many of these countries, including the US, is not operating within international law. And of course, we need to stay in our alliances with BRICS and with global South countries, because together we can possibly put up a front against the United States.
And speaking of staying within our alliance, within BRICS as well, there would be, according to the Trump administration, even further tariffs imposed, about another 10% if we continue with our alignment with BRICS. So this is quite a delicate balancing act. What does the South African government then do to protect this large economy, and also the second largest that South Africa exports to, and also protecting our principles as well when it comes to foreign policy, this really delicate balancing act?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's the largest economy in the world. You can't ignore it. I think that the South African government is going to continue. Parks Tau, Steenhuisen, and all the other ministries that is affected, they are going to have to continue to engage with their counterparts in the United States, even though it is very difficult conditions. We know that the strategy here is twofold. On the one hand, Trump has weaponized trade by introducing these tariffs and sanctions because it wants a good deal. So, they don't want a deal for equals where we both benefit. Trump wants a good deal for the United States at our expense. That's number one. Anyone who thinks differently is smoking something. And two, it's also wanting to bully us because of geopolitical considerations, targeting South Africa as the junior partner of BRICS, wanting to make an example of us, spreading lies and putting us on the back foot about white genocide and so on and so forth. It's all part of a bigger plan to try and delegitimize the government of South Africa, delegitimize the ruling party, which is the ANC, and who knows how far they are going to want to take it.
Some might say, and some have criticized the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, and the government to say that, look, while you have taken Israel to the ICJ, you also hosted the Sudanese general of the Rapid Support Forces, who's also accused of human rights violations in Sudan. So what do you say about those kinds of contradictions? And would you say that in some instances, South Africa may be poking the bear?
I don't think it's about poking the bear. We have a situation, Masa, where the state of Israel has been not being held accountable for decades. It has gotten away with breaking international law, breaking international humanitarian law. They know that they've got the backing of the United States in terms of the Security Council, where the US continuously uses its veto power to protect blatant aggression from the state of Israel. We don't see this. There's not a pattern of decades long of violating international law on the part of the Sudanese. The situation, of course, is unacceptable. There are a number of parties involved there. We, as South Africans, also trying to resolve the crisis that's unfolding in the Sudanese, that part of Africa. But this was a necessary step, I think, to try and say that if we don't begin to give the state of Israel a moment of pause to say that no one is questioning whether you should or should not exist, but you need to be held accountable in terms of your conduct, your aggression towards the Palestinians and people around you.
And just briefly, Prof, before I let you go, I really want to know what your thoughts are when it comes to Taiwan and the relationship with South Africa. And of course, them saying that they're considering imposing semiconductor chip export restrictions to South Africa, considering that Taiwan produces 90% of these around the world.
Yeah, look, I mean, I see the hand of America part of this, because Taiwan, it's a little bit too late for this kind of sanction. Taiwan knew from the very beginning, just like the United States, South Africa's official policy is a one China. As far as South Africa is concerned, Taiwan is part of the People's Republic of China. That has never been an issue, a question. So for Taiwan suddenly to want to wake up and pretend that it is an independent country, as far as South Africa is concerned, by imposing these sanctions, is just laughable. It's the same strategy and sanction that they are pushing against China. So clearly, again, we see a situation like Ukraine, where the Americans are using their proxy, which is Taiwan, to try and inflict pain and sanctions on countries such as China, such as South Africa, and so forth. I think we need to engage with the Taiwanese. We've never had a negative relationship with them. I think it is resolvable. But to pretend that South Africa's policy was never a one China policy is disingenuous on the part of the Taiwanese.
Professor van Heerden, always such a pleasure to get your insights. Really appreciate your time.